everyone, I'm Linda from Purple Rose Digital, and in this video I will show you how to make this double waterfall in my steampunk theme. So we've got the front cover and the inner cover and the base, and everything will go onto the base, and then the inner cover will come on the inside. And this is how the waterfalls will go in. They will lie next to each other, and the inner cover will be this way around on the inside, and then your front cover over that. The second waterfall will be lying like this so that it works in reverse. So that's how it will go in. And those little glue flaps at the bottom will fold over the inner cover, and the outer cover will be glued over them. Okay, so that's just to give you an overview so that you know sort of where we're going, because this one is a little bit technically difficult. It had me scratching my head a couple of times because I've only done single waterfall before. Here we have our cards. The cards for the flaps of the waterfall are the ones that are square, and I'm simply picking out an order, and once you're happy with the order you can start gluing them in. I'm just going to start at the top, and we're going to place each on that little strip where you have folded your waterfall mechanism. And make sure you don't go over that fold line, because then you will have the flap sticking over and it will make your waterfall get stuck. So a trick to a good waterfall is to not glue your flaps or your cards, whatever you want to call them, over your fold line. So make sure you're just below the fold line. A good way to do that is as I'm doing here now. The back is folded in so that I can see exactly where that strip is, where I need to put the first one. You're simply going to place your glue and you are going to put your card on carefully. Make sure it's straight and just below the fold line. Secure that. As you can see, it's just a tiny bit of the fold that's showing at the top, and then we're going to move it up and onto the next. Again, I'm carefully going to place my glue so that it doesn't go over the fold line. That's why I'm using the small applicator, so that I don't overdo it with the glue. Place the card. And onto the next. And always make sure that you didn't have glue leaking through at the back. You'll see later on that I did accidentally do that with the first one, and it made a bit of a mess on the paper on the back, but luckily that gets covered. So there's 6 of them. I'm going to speed up the video a bit. So you just continue and do each after the other, making sure not to go over the fold line, and get them as straight as possible, otherwise your waterfall will not be aligned very well. Second last and last one. So we've got all of those flaps or cards in, and you can already see how it will work. But of course, for this kit I've made some beautiful phrases for the back. Here you can see that I messed up on the first, or rather the last one, and that it's got some glue there, but I just loosened it. Luckily, I'm gonna be placing something over the one side, but I will have to cut a piece of scrap cardboard just to cover the rest of my area. So now we are going to glue on the band. So you're gluing on the center of the band. It is slightly wider than your panel, so make sure you don't put your glue all the way to the end. So it's a bit, your glue needs to be a bit more narrow than the actual fold. So you can see, and I actually did make yours even wider because I found it got, the waterfall mechanism can sometimes get stuck in the band if it's not wide enough. So just make sure you don't glue past the actual size of the panel. So for these cards, you can put it on for the last one like this over the band if you want to do it like that, because the last waterfall never really flips over completely. Don't put it this way around, like you might be tempted to because of the direction of the other image, but you definitely want them the right side up when the card is flipped open. So like this, because now the card is open, we want to be able to read it. Okay, so let's carry on and put on all our inspirational phrases. You will see they are more of a landscape shape, not square, and that is to make them fit exactly on the back, because we've lost that space of the strip where we glue our cards on. And just make sure you align them nicely at the top and the sides. There is a slight little space below so that it doesn't hinder the waterfall mechanisms. So sorry about that, my video skipped, but I've actually done all of the back sides with the phrases. Now we can close the band. Just make sure you mark where your glue needs to go, because the band doesn't go all the way to the end. So only put glue on this piece so that you do not glue anything other than the band itself. So that completes the first waterfall, and we can now test it out again. As you can see, it's working quite well, and we can carry on to the next. So this one, the biggest difference is basically that the flap on the back side is smaller, or shorter rather, and it doesn't need to go through a band. So it will make more sense as we do the final assembly. Don't mind the mess on the back of mine. I did all of them the wrong way around and had to redo it. So don't mind that, but that's going to be covered by the phrases anyway. So again, you're just going to move on. You can go from top to bottom or bottom to top, doesn't really matter. So I started at the bottom this time. Again, make sure there's no glue going over the fold line. You do not want to glue these over the fold line or your waterfall will get stuck. So just make sure you put them just below so that a tiny bit of the fold is still sticking out. And of course, I've already inked all my edges, but you can always just touch up here and there if something is sticking out. Now we can do the phrases on the back. Again, you want them to be right side up when the card is flipped open, like this. So we are just going to place our glue and align it with the top and the sides, and there will be a slight space on the bottom side of the phrase to give space for the fold lines of your waterfall so that they don't get stuck. And if you find anything that's sticking over, you can just trim it and ink where needed. So I'm just going to go through and do all of them. Just going to speed it up, and I'm sure you get the idea by now. And once they are all done, we are going to start putting our waterfalls onto our base. That's the last one, our second last one. Let's do the last one. Let's talk about glue. I'm using a craft glue that is locally available here in South Africa, and it dries, it hardens when it dries, and it dries clear, but I really like using this. But of course you can use any glue you prefer, or your double-sided tape, but just make sure, if you are, especially if you're gifting this to someone, that it is something that will last for a very long time. And that is what I like about this glue. As you can see from my back sides of the flaps where it was damaged, when you do try and pull these things apart with this glue, it will just tear up the paper. So it really sticks on very well. So that is the last one done, and it already looks so good. Let's give it a taste. And you can see it's working really well. So we are now going to carry on to gluing them into the base. So this is the base, and for the first one we are simply going to glue that band onto the base, and the band only. But to get your spacing, you can flip that last little glue flap over the base, and it's not going to be glued on there, but it's just to get the exact space where you need to put it. And on the final design, I did make your base and cover a bit wider, because I saw here that, you know, they just fit in and they slightly stick over, because I forgot to account for the width of the band, which is slightly wider than the waterfall, but yours will be a bit wider. So that is how they are going to fit. So we can now carry on and glue the first one in place. So again, we are only going to place glue on the band, and it's going to sit right there at the bottom, with that last glue flap being able to be folded over the inner of the cover, but we'll use the base as a guideline for now. So you are placing your glue on the whole of the back of the band, but be sure to not go too far out. I'm just going to spread mine inwards, because we don't want the back of the waterfall mechanism to be glued on, only the band. So make sure you don't have any glue going anywhere else. So to be safe, I'm just going to spread mine out a bit to make sure it doesn't ooze out when I press down. Flip it around and put it exactly in the space that it needs to be. To get the exact space, again, you can just flip that last glue flap over the base like that, just to check, even though it's not going to be glued in there, but it gives you the exact space. So the only thing sticking over is that last glue flap, and we can test it out. You'll see the last one never goes all the way through, unless you make your waterfalls much longer, but then you'll have an empty space, you know, at the bottom. But you can just always flip that card up to read the message below with your hand. Okay, the other one is going to sit in the same space at the bottom, aligned with the bottom. Again, we're going to test it by flipping that glue flap over the base so we can see. But basically that bigger glue flap that is left is where we are going to place our glue. Not the smaller one, the bigger one. So it's sort of like you are doing it upside down, but it's not really upside down. It's just that 5 of the cards or 4 of the cards are already pulled in, with one lying flat and one lying open. You'll see just now what I mean. It will make more sense. But flip it around, make sure you align that with the bottom, and you'll see there's only a slight space at the top, not a huge space at the top. I'm checking again by flipping this glue flap over my base. And the white of the base that you see there is what's going to be glued in to your journal. So that's why we are keeping that white, because we are gluing that flat into our journal. Okay, so that looks really good. Test it out, and it's flipping along nicely. Okay, next up we are gonna glue in the inner cover. So just flip that back down into position. As I said, one card will be completely down and the one is flipped up where you see the back side. So as you can see now, we only have those 2 glue flaps sticking out. And just make sure you've got that nice and straight, because you don't want your front to look askew. And you're simply going to fold over these glue flaps. We have added quite a bit of width in, or thickness in, with our waterfall, so you do not simply fold them flat. They do sort of form a little bit of a spine to accommodate that thickness of everything that's underneath. So don't stress about that. It's not a flat fold. But just make sure you put your glue on these flaps, but not too much towards the waterfalls, because you don't want to glue them in by accident. And I'm going really slow on this last part because I just want to make sure you understand, because this is the more tricky part of the whole assembly. So that's nice and straight, and I'm just going to flip over these glue flaps and gently get them into place, making sure everything is still where it's supposed to be. And I'm going to open it up to make sure that I did not glue my waterfalls onto this inner cover, because we do not want to do that. Okay, there's no glue here. It's really my corner folded for some reason, but it's looking good. It's not glued on where it's not supposed to be. And now you can pull on that inner cover again to see if it's still working well, and it is. So next we are gonna do the front cover. And I didn't show this in the video, but there are a bunch of label options that says open, to reveal, or open me, or open and pull. So you can add one of those once you have this in your journal, just to indicate to the user that they need to pull down, open and pull down to activate the whole mechanism. So I'm simply going to glue all the way to the edges. And this glue is now finished. I'm just going to grab a different glue, the big bottle, and we're going to go all over, and we're going to go over those glue flaps that we have just glued on as well, because we need to cover those And I'm just spreading it out to make sure that it doesn't ooze out too much. So simply place your cover on top, align it nice and straight so that you don't have to trim anything or have pieces of white sticking out. And just press it flat to make sure the glue is on and the pieces are sticking together everywhere. And you can ink this little piece of the flap that is sticking out if you want to, or you can decorate it with something else. You can add a piece of material over the bottom, ribbon, lace, anything that will go with your project, or an interesting piece of paper, or maybe even washi tape. And I'm just giving it a slight trim because, as I mentioned, mine is not as wide as the final one, so my glue flaps were sticking out a bit. And that is the final result. As you can see, it doesn't go all the way. The last one is just, you can just flip it up and read. Okay, but it's working really well. I'm really happy with how that turned out. So once you're happy with yours, you can go and put it into your journal. You can glue it flat into your journal like this. And just to show you again, this is how it works. And I've added my little Open Me label. And it's really looking so good. Be sure to check out my Etsy store for more items. I've got a bunch of steampunk items. I'll show you this paper clip that I have here. But there's an 8-panel folio, a slider journal insert, which is really cool, and a set of 5 surprise paper clips, each with a moving or surprise element. Here you can see the wheel, and it's available in my Etsy shop as well. Thanks for watching.